think it's really important to understand that, like any kind of asset, there are ups and downs, there are bears and bulls, right? So we're at the moment, depending on who you ask, we're either in a deep bear market and coming out of it, or we're well into a bull market, but we're somewhere on the cusp.
Hello, and welcome to the Market Bull Podcast. Please note, topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial or investment advice. Ben Rose is the General Manager of Binance for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. Binance is a global crypto exchange platform that launched in 2017 and has now become one of the largest in the world. On the show, Ben talked about how Binance grew so quickly, how it is establishing a presence in Australia, and what they offer investors. He talked about the challenges within crypto currently, including the perceptions and also the regulatory barriers. He also talked about how Binance approaches these. He also alluded to what the future of crypto could look like for this region. Here is Ben Rose.
Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich, and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me today on the show is Ben Rose, the General Manager for Australia and New Zealand at Binance. Now, many are familiar with the name Binance. It's one of the largest, or currently could be the largest, crypto exchange platform in the world. And it's an industry that's getting a bit of a spotlight for the good and the bad reasons, and there's a lot of things happening within that area of the market. But yeah, welcome to the show, Ben.
Hey, how's it going, Ben? Good to be here.
I know it's great that we both got Ben names. It makes it quite simple, and there's no difficulties in pronouncing things. But you're speaking from Auckland, so we've got a bit of a time difference. But your history and I guess your role, will go through what Binance is and everything. But what's led you down the path to really taking on, which you can imagine is a really, I guess, sporadic and quickly evolving industry that you would have only joined, a handful of months or even years ago?
Yeah, so my background's quite similar to a lot of people who've joined crypto over the last couple of years or so. So I've got a TradFi background. I've worked in banking, health insurance, life insurance. So the background in sales and marketing from a regulated financial services point of view. And we're seeing a lot of people from that background coming into this space because they're seeing crypto, they're seeing blockchain as, the next iteration of what financial services could be. So look, started off, Bitcoin is only 12 years old, right? So, and Binance itself is 6 years old. So it's a super young industry, really fast evolving. And so that's part of what attracted me to it. I've been into crypto for a couple of years, just as an individual. And I saw the opportunity to, work in this part of the world, which I love, for a business like Binance is pretty exciting, because I think what Binance offers is pretty unique in the crypto world. And it's something that we hadn't seen a huge amount of in this part of the world. So all of those things I looked at and I thought, well, that's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of challenges there, and it has been.
So spiraling down the rabbit hole, because a lot of, I guess, information and education about crypto is, at least on the surface, a little bit introductory for a lot of people, and almost a subject that some want to veer away from. But from your own personal experience, really attacking this, and as you said, coming from a point of view that you had been looking at the technology and its applications and then really got excited about work. I mean, what was the introduction for yourself, and therefore the, I guess, journey or pathway to then joining Binance?
I think, like a lot of people, I saw headlines that kind of intrigued me and just got me interested in doing a bit of research into it, because I've always been a bit skeptical. So I saw lots of negative headlines, and I thought, well, this thing looks like it's growing. I don't want to miss out. I want to understand it. I don't want to disregard it out of hand. So I looked into it. I did my research, and I won't go into the technical details of it. Pretty much what blockchain is a way of transferring data peer to peer without having to rely on intermediaries. And it does that through, really smart technology. And there's lots of advantages of that, but that's the basic thesis of it. And if you apply that to finance, which is just one of the use cases, but at the moment it's the biggest, that means that you can do things like cross-border transactions. You can pay remittances without having to pay the huge fees or pay a huge amount of time that has had to be the case because we've had to rely on trusted intermediaries like banks. And so in our part of the world, think about the Pacific Islands region, people there pay the highest remittance fees globally. And so you're talking about some of the countries in the Pacific rely on remittances from overseas relatives for 30-40% of their GDP. And so a huge amount of money is going to intermediaries. And so you've got a technology which disrupts that, which disintermediates that. And I see that as really exciting. And like anything, it's going to take time to catch on, people to understand it. But I think the benefits of it versus what we've known for the last couple of hundred years in the traditional financial system are significant. So I find that pretty exciting.
And cracking apart what Binance is, because I know a lot of
Yeah.
people will have heard of it or seen it in the news. And again, given that it's only 6 years old, I guess, brand awareness that it's managed to acquire quite quickly is, again, a reflection of how fast and evolving this market is. But what is Binance? And more so, how did it start making its inroads into, well, the area that you're really responsible for, which is, Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands?
Yeah, so Binance started in 2017. It was founded by our founder, who is still our founder and CEO, who's called CZ, Changpeng Zhao. And he had experience in traditional finance and also working for some other crypto businesses, and set it up as a trading exchange. So it's the core of our ecosystem, and it's an ecosystem of lots of different businesses now, but the core is our cryptocurrency exchange. So it's a place where you can buy and you can sell and you can trade different cryptos. There are about 350 on there. You can hold them if you want to. And depending on what country you're in around the world, there are different services and products available depending on whatever the regulations are in that part of the world. So that's at the center of our ecosystem. And then around that, you've got other businesses and entities we've set up to grow adoption of crypto. So an understanding of blockchain. So there's Binance Academy, which is educational content. There's Binance Charity, and we've got Trust Wallet. We've got a whole lot of different entities. The one at the center is crypto. The way that we look at it is we consider ourselves a blockchain infrastructure developer and provider. So we've got a venture capital arm, Binance Labs, which invests in blockchain businesses as well. And so today, crypto is the main use case for blockchain technology, and that's kind of where we're at. But we place lots of bets in other areas, and we're involved in lots of other use cases too.
And then when you're rolling this out with Australia, New Zealand, I know there's quite a few
Yeah.
countries elsewhere around the world that you would say are a bit further ahead the adoption stage of it. But what's been important in rolling out Binance and really its uses for the people across Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands?
Yeah, so Binance has got I think we're about 150 million customers across the world right now. We're in lots of different places. So what we've done I'll talk about Australia, for example. So Australia, there was a local crypto startup which started in 2017. Binance invested in it in 2019, and in 2020 bought majority shares, launched it as Binance Australia. The 2020 was when Binance Australia went live, and we've got about close to 1 million users in Australia right now. What that involves is when you're launching any kind of financial services entity, you have to make sure you're registered with the right regulators. So in our case, that's with AUSTRAC for AML. You got to register with the police financial intelligence unit to report suspicious transactions, obviously with the ATO and, all those sorts of organizations. So that's, if you're running a spot trading exchange, which is what we do, that's what you have to do. Different jurisdictions do it in different ways, and we've seen that evolving quite quickly over the last few years. So places like Europe have announced but not yet implemented a complete crypto regulatory framework called MiCA. In the UAE, they set up a regulator specifically for virtual assets called VARA. Other places like Hong Kong, they've also launched crypto licensing. Australia has actually just announced a consultation, which is live right now. So all the different parties are submitting on that consultation. And the plan that Treasury have is that anyone operating a crypto business in Australia will have to have an AFSL with a few additional conditions and requirements around that. So there will be licensing for crypto businesses in Australia, and that will come into effect at some point next year. We don't have the exact timing yet. So that's pretty exciting, because if you think about crypto as a global business, and so the regulators all around the world are grappling with, is this something we want to have locally? Do we not want to have it locally? Do we want to encourage it? Because there are benefits of doing that. Australia's come out and taken, the view that we've got financial service legislation in place. We could actually apply that and tweak that to crypto businesses with some differences, and then have that overseen by ASIC, the corporate regulator. So, we're pretty excited about that. Other countries, if I take New Zealand, for example, New Zealand hasn't yet done that. They've got the same approach, similar approach, where you register with the local AML, anti-money laundering regulator. In their case, the DIA. But they'll have a look at that, and inevitably, countries are going to bring in licensing for this, because it's growing in popularity. So if I think about Australia, there was an ASX survey recently that 1 in 3 Australians has held some form of crypto. So if you've got 1/3 of the people engaging in this area, you need to make sure that you understand it and you've got good regulatory oversight of it. So as adoption grows, I think we'll see that that licensing growing, adoption growing with it.
Yeah, I think that sounds like probably the most important legislation framework I can think of that's coming in to really help, structure the industry, because I think there's been this perception that the Binance or crypto trading platforms have sort of been against government legislation. Like there's almost this battle between them, that there's been this, perceived that it's all bad, or they're trying to control it. And it's sort of been trying to figure out what to do with it. And I think, at least from an outside point of view, it's been, painted with a certain brush because of certain events that have happened within the industry. And I can imagine that's been quite challenging for Binance, and more so just as you do, it's like when things start growing, just little setbacks have massive sorts of, I guess, implications on the entire sector. But you said there that's one of the main legislation changes coming. Have there been any other notable, changes in the compliance or the ways in which Binance has operated over the handful of years? I mean, how does the company pivot and adapt to these as they're sort of rolled out quite well quickly, as the governments, as they do have to do catch up?
Yeah. So look, I think it's interesting that you say that there is this perception that we're against regulation. So just from my point of view, and this is as someone who does it every single day, I've got people in my team. I've got ex-ASIC, ex-ATO people in my team. Most of our new hires are ex-banking, and we spend a lot of time engaging with regulators. And we're part of Blockchain Australia, and through that, I work with all of the other exchanges. And I tell you, everyone is for this and looking to engage with regulators and wants this, because everyone understands the benefits for consumers of it. I haven't yet seen someone, in the Australian or the New Zealand context, trying to flaunt it or avoid it. I think it's inevitable. As an industry, you have to mature as an industry, and part of that is being regulated. And you've seen that in pretty much every industry, not just financial. There weren't rules of the road before the car was invented, right? And so they had to be invented once people were driving around in cars with red flags in front of them. We're at that point with crypto. This thing didn't exist a few years ago. Now it does. And not only does it exist, but everyone's getting into it. So we need to put some rules in place quickly. So that I would say, is a perception out there, but I think it's an incorrect one, for certainly in my experience and my point of view. Other things that have changed, well, it's all changing, right? So tax authorities around the world are also getting to grips with this, because they, it's treated differently in some areas. In Australia and in New Zealand, crypto is treated as a taxable product. So if you have to pay capital gains tax on it, for example, and you have to pay income tax on it. This isn't advice; you should get advice. But there are, accountants now advising their customers on this. So there are incorrect perceptions and assumptions around being able to hide from regulators. That's not the case. And I would say that crypto is probably one of the worst places for people to try and fool regulators, because the thing about crypto, unlike traditional fiat money, is every single transaction is traceable and is there forevermore. So if you were a tax authority and you wanted to look at somebody's history, you'd be able to follow it from the very first transaction they had. So, I think it is all evolving. It is all changing. But the reason for that is because it's growing and regulators have got a lot on their plate. And now they're going, okay, right, well, if 1 in 3 people does this thing, now we need to make sure we've got some good rules around it to make sure people are doing it responsibly.
Yeah, the perceptions are interesting because I remember my first, I guess, awareness to crypto. At least there was this almost it's used for bad activities, and as soon as you sort of realize, it's the complete opposite. Everything's tracked and traced. You go, well, why was this perception created? Why, it's the complete opposite. It'd be one of the worst
I'll give
things
you a
to
great
use.
stat. I'll give you a really good stat. So one of the biggest on-chain tracing companies is called Chainalysis. And they did a survey recently to understand what percentage of all crypto transactions are proceeds of illicit crime. And they got down to 0.25%, which is low, but should be zero, but it's low. But that's what it is. And that's, we spend a lot of time fighting that, as do, all decent crypto exchanges. But 0.25%. The UN recently estimated that anywhere between 2 and 5%, and they don't know where between,
It's a big
because
gap there as well.
you can't track it, of fiat money is the proceeds of illicit crime. So, crypto is actually, law enforcement's best friend. We run workshops with the AFP, with the New Zealand police, teaching them how to do this stuff. Because once you have the tools, you can trace transactions across borders, across individuals. Whereas with fiat money, it's a lot harder. So, I think you have to take a lot of the headlines with a pinch of salt, because people are often nervous of what's new. And also there's a big industry with a vested interest in this new technology not working, because there are lots of people who for years have made a lot of money out of introducing friction into transactions. And they're all quite profitable when we see that with announcement results, results announcements every 6 to 12 months. So there's a good vested interest in this thing being poo-pooed. And so when you think about those things, it's worth looking into it and doing research to understand, is this something actually where there's an opportunity and could be a force for good?
Well said. And I mean, the adoption of crypto, I think, is it's taking its real strides, and you can see it being used, as I said, from a consumer point of view in different countries. But that sort of paints a picture for is the area that you're controlling or helping to set up the crypto usage, at least. I mean, how are you seeing that landscape evolve, especially in Australia, knowing that, well, arguably I've attended a few events, and at least earlier this year in 2023, it's been a bit iffy for some of the crypto coins, at least, that people invest in. So might be a two-pronged sort of question. But I mean, how are you seeing the landscape evolve? And then I guess the secondary point is, what do you think are the catalysts for that major adoption? Because you can see that people view it as an investment vehicle, which is great, and always these cryptos, but you'd almost see that when it starts being used for those transactional values, you start paying for things with a certain crypto, that's when it takes that next level, because it becomes almost like traditional FX investing, where you have currency can evolve in, but you can also use it. So yeah.
Yes. Well, let's split into two. So I'll talk about kind of where we're at in terms of market cycles, and I think it's really important to understand that, like any kind of asset, there are ups and downs, there are bears and bulls, right? So we're at the moment, depending on who you ask, we're either in a deep bear market and coming out of it, or we're well into a bull market, but we're somewhere on the cusp. It looks like things are picking up. Market cap of Bitcoin, for example, is the highest it's been in 16 months. Bitcoin's one of the main cryptos. But there are other cryptos which are down and others which are up. So there are, we list about 350 different coins on our exchange. There are thousands of cryptos. One of the things about crypto is there's a really low barrier to entry. So you could launch one now and it would take you a couple of minutes. So in the same way as some traditional currencies are really strong and some are really weak, you get the same distribution across crypto. But absolutely, it's subject to peaks and troughs of markets, or certainly has been until now, right? The other point is about utility, and so up until recently, a lot of cryptos, there wasn't a huge amount of utility, and so people tended to use them as speculative assets. So you had people, but trying to buy low and sell high, and trying to get rich quick and all that sort of thing, and like with all assets, it's worked for some, it hasn't worked for others. You tend to read the stories of the ones it hasn't worked for.
Always hear the winners.
On the ones it has. Yep. Because everyone's quiet when they're a loser. But there are lots of different kinds of coins. So one example is a thing called a stable coin, which is a coin which is backed by some sort of real world asset, whether it's a fiat currency or a commodity or something else. Those are used right now by people paying their employees overseas, for example. So lots of developers who might be working in developing countries where they have quite volatile currencies with quite high inflation, working for employers in developed countries where they don't, often get paid in stable coins because they can be certain that, from when I send you the coin for your work, it's going to be worth the same amount when you receive it as it was when I sent it to you. So that's one thing. There's another kind of coin. You may have heard of Ethereum. Ethereum has been built in such a way that it allows people to create what are called smart contracts, which are quite simple rules-based contracts. So if I do this, then you do that. People are looking at that for all sorts of contracts based activity like insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So there are utility use cases growing. Retail adoption is growing through, we've got a thing called Binance Pay, which is a point of sale app. There are lots of others out there too. So utility is growing. It's no longer just a speculative asset. The headlines tend to be about price spikes because people find that exciting and they like to have a bit of schadenfreude if someone loses lots of money. That is something that, will change over time.
Okay.
Which brings me to the second part, which was your question about how do you grow adoption? And for me, the vast majority of it has been about education. So education of the media to say, hey, this thing isn't a joke. And actually quite a lot of people are using it and finding value in it. And here are the good things about it. So challenging some of those perceptions so that we can start to share some more balanced stories in mainstream media, not just crypto media where it's all, it's largely all positive, but in mainstream media where people, the next 150 million users are going to be reading about this stuff. But also in giving potential users and customers access to decent information. So like any new financial thing, there are loads of people who jump in and try and take advantage of the fact that it's new and the fact that people don't quite understand it yet. So if you go online, you look on YouTube for crypto education. I mean, there's just a list as long as your arm. But how do you know what's good and what's not? How do you know where someone's trying to sell you something and they're not? So what we've done, and others have done it too, right? I'm biased and I think ours is the best. We've got a platform called Binance Academy. It's got content in 30 different languages, videos, text, all that sort of thing. Modules, courses, you can do courses and take away NFT certificates, all that kind of thing. From a very, very, very basic introductory, what's a crypto, what's blockchain, what is a wallet, all that sort of thing, all the way up through to super complicated specialist trading strategies that people are using for day trading and everything in between. And so the idea is, I know this is awesome. I'm excited about this. But if all you've seen are headlines in the media about people losing all their money and that criminals are using it and all of that kind of stuff, well, you probably want to get your head around it before you dip in and put money at risk. And so the education is kind of how you do that. The reality is there'll always be early adopters with new technologies, but the real growth comes from when it goes mainstream. And, I mentioned that stat before that, a third of Australians have or has had crypto. We did some research recently and actually only 42% of Australian crypto investors think they could explain it well to a friend. So that's where the gap is, right? You've got people getting into it. We've got to make sure that people really understand it and that then they can benefit from it, tell their friends, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get that kind of, that virtuous circle.
Well, yeah, the new age investor now has a portion of their, portfolio allocated towards some form of crypto, if it is a stable coin or an asset-backed digital coin or something along those lines. And, Bitcoin and Ethereum are really the main two that command a lot of attention. And I won't pronounce myself as an expert either, but I know there's a whole range of the different coins as you mentioned. But there's really this, you've got to immerse yourself in a bit of the education to get there, but you can just see that there is this ongoing sort of interest in it. So that would go to the first point, which is for people that are really looking to dip their toe into all this. If it wasn't the academy, the Binance Academy, I mean, when you're talking about the accessibility and ease of use, I mean, how do people start going down this path to then, pardon me, setting up their wallet or then starting to actually buy and accumulate some sorts of coins?
Yeah, so when it comes to crypto, there's a number of different ways that you can buy it. The easiest is from a centralized exchange, so like a Binance, and there are others too. So with those, in Australia, you go through you'll go to their website and they'll ask you for identification information to make sure they know who you are. You'll upload your passport, date of birth, and all that sort of thing, as all financial service providers have to do. And then you'll get a username and a password. So then you have an account on Binance, and you can use your credit card, for example, to go and buy and sell crypto. Hold it on there if you want to. And that's the simplest way, is to sign up to a centralized exchange where you get an account, and you can buy the cryptos that they have on their platform. And if you want to, you can hold them on there too and trade them and sell them. When you start getting sort of more specialized, one of the great things about crypto is you haven't got to rely on other entities to hold them for you, like you have with your money. So you can hold it on Binance if you want to, but otherwise you could self-custody. And so there are ways of doing that. There are different kinds of wallets. There are software wallets. There are hard wallets, which look a bit like a USB drive. There are lots of different kinds of ways to do that. I won't go into detail here, but typically the first step is that people will join an exchange and get their head around it and learn and work out how it all works. And once they're more comfortable and start accumulating, more crypto, they'll often hold a portion in their own wallet and have another portion on the exchange for trading. And there are also other ways of trading, decentralized exchanges and peer-to-peer, and it all starts to get quite complicated and exciting. But the very first step, so it's not super scary, is sign up to a local exchange and make sure it's one that's registered locally. Make sure it's one that's got people on shore locally, so that you've got people to go to if it doesn't work. If you've got questions, you've got people to help you on board. All of that sort of thing.
And I mean, one that I'll say, so hopefully you can elaborate on a bit more, is some of those horror stories that you hear of people that lose their passphrase or pass key. And there's one, and I'm not sure if it's genuinely accurate or if it's just, again, the noise in the sector, but of the one guy that's got his Bitcoin wallet or this, handful, and, he's on his last attempt before he gets locked out forever. And I think that's almost been a bit of a fear thing. And you can see there's all this advertising campaign from Google now of like, you've got 150 accounts, you can barely remember one of your passwords. 10 minutes later, there's almost this sudden, oh man, we've got passwords and passphrases that if we forget, we can't get access to. So what does that really mean? And is it over the top? Is it, is it actually genuinely like that? I mean, what are some of the misconceptions with that as well?
Yeah, sure. So there are pros and cons of traditional centralized finance and decentralized finance. So one of the pros of centralized finance is that you have everything with your bank. If it goes wrong, you pick up the phone, you call them, they'll look after it for you. So it's easy.
After on hold for about 30 to 40 minutes, you usually get through to someone. Yeah.
There is that. The downside of that is they're not 24/7. As we've seen globally, banks aren't always around when you go back to get your money out. And actually what they do, their business model is taking the money that you put in and going and lending it out. That's how they make a profit. So you pay them for that benefit, and you have to rely on them allowing you to have access to your funds as and when, right? So those are some of the pros and the cons. With decentralized finance, with crypto, so some of the pros are it's frictionless. You can transfer it wherever you like, whenever you like. It takes seconds. It costs cents on the dollar to send a huge amount of money around the world, all that sort of thing. You can have access to it. It's live 24/7. One of the downsides is if you're self-custodying, it's on you. So if you decide to self-custody in a cold device and you lose your password to that device, your funds are gone. So that's why lots of people use a centralized exchange like us. We've actually just launched a software wallet called Web3 Wallet, where you have a username and password the same, because you can reset usernames and passwords through us. So there are pros and cons, and that's why it's worth working out, how do I want to engage in this and what's right for me? So one of the things with those usernames and passwords is if you have all your crypto on a wallet and you lose it, you can just buy a new one, use your username and password, and you will have access to all of your funds. Because really what's saved on the device is the rights to the crypto, because the crypto are held on the blockchain. So, totally there are horror stories, but, I dare say we've seen one or two horror stories of traditional finance over the years as well, right?
100%, 100%. And going forward, as you're progressing, I mean, we're wrapping up 2023 now, and it feels like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, this is just going on a tangent of its own, the whole crypto world, which is awesome to see. But I mean, what do you really envision happening over the next, 6 to 12 months as Binance continues to roll out and get a bigger footprint in Australia, but also globally, in the just uses and adoption of crypto and the exchange?
So, despite what you read and what you may see, the Australian crypto community is super vibrant, super active. We were just in Melbourne over the weekend for the Oz CryptoCon, which had 10,000 people turn up, really, really passionate. And we've got people, looking to invest more. Think about what, there's an upturn at the moment. They're looking to see what that means from them. So, give you an example. I think we did a survey recently, and 63% of our customers were either very bullish or bullish about the outlook for crypto right now. So those who are in it, get it, they're excited. But what we also see is adoption growing as crypto becomes more mainstream, part of the conversation. So we're seeing, in Australia, we're seeing some of the really big banks have built teams, and they're doing pilots, some with the RBA, on cross-border blockchain transactions. Some of the major banks overseas are buying crypto exchanges. So we're starting to see this kind of merging of those worlds as crypto becomes far less fringy and just part of the mix and part of how people engage with their finances. So yeah, I'm looking at 2024 as a bit of, of the year of kind of crypto going mainstream.
Yeah, and for people that are now, again, there'll be listeners out here that know a little bit about it, but almost you'd say approaching that, oh, yeah, where do I start? And I think I'd allude to the Binance Academy, which is an online resource, which is fantastic, and you talked about it. But for listeners and viewers that wanting to go down the rabbit hole now of really learning something completely different that challenges a lot of what we perceive as, finance, where can they go and how can they go about engaging with it, and then potentially going down the path of setting up an account?
Yeah, sure. So super easy. Just Google Binance Academy, select whichever language you want it to be in, and go from there. And I would say, put a bit of time aside, just over a weekend, kick off with an hour or two, just really get your head into it. And then you'll understand and start to see what else you want to learn. And Binance Academy can take you there, and there's all the information. But what it won't do is it won't sell you a token, it won't sell you a coin, and it won't sell you on joining Binance. So if ever anybody does contact you and do any of those things, just ignore them. You're actually not allowed to do that in financial services, to approach people. It will be a scam. So start off at your own pace, do that, understand it, see if it's something that you're interested in. Of course, if you decide it is and you want to join Binance, fantastic. Really easy. Just Google Binance in Australia and it will take you through to our website. But that's where I would start. Get your head around it, read about it, see if it's for you. You might be more interested in NFTs than crypto. You might be more interested in smart contracts than Bitcoin, for example, or Bitcoin might be a thing for you. But don't read the headlines, positive or negative, right? Don't be scared off by it, but also don't think, don't FOMO into it and think, people are getting rich quick. I need to get in quick before I miss out. You won't. Take the time to just get your head around it and understand it. And then when you feel confident, if you want to join an exchange, obviously make the right choice and join my one. But that's where I would start. Totally.
Yeah, fantastic. I think I've got a fair bit of researching to do on the Binance Academy as well. And I looked at starting a few of them, and yeah, there's a lot of rich content there for me to absorb, and I'm sure others as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Ben, for joining me on the show today and talking about everything Binance. And I look forward to seeing how it'll progresses and evolves, and hopefully get you back on to talk about some of the updates within the sector and the industry, and how Binance is tackling the crypto world. So thank you so much.
Love to. Hey, thanks for having me, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow The Market Bull on our socials at Twitter and LinkedIn by searching The Market Bull. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website by visiting www.themarketbull.com.au.